So you just bought your Harrington Arms HDDG compensator. You want to install it on your PSA Dagger. We'll go ahead and do that for you, and then we're going to go over some questions you may have about the build. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is remove your slide from your PSA Dagger. Make sure it's clear. All right, remove your spring. And then pull your barrel forward. That's just going to allow you to get to your threads easily. We're using the 243 Loctite that we have on our website. We've already shot this compensator and set up before, but I'm going to go ahead and clean these barrel threads. Preferably you want to use a degreaser of some sort. Let that Loctite cure, but you can see how much oil and residue came off the threads alone. This is just going to help that Loctite a lot. We're going to do the same thing with the set screws on the compensator. If they're brand new, they may have a little bit of oil on them from packaging. Again, this is used, so it's going to have some carbon on it, but we're just doing this for demonstration purposes. Okay, once you have all the carbon and oils off the threads, we can go ahead and start adding Loctite. So you're going to want to put this pretty generously on here, especially on the barrel threads. Remove your set screws out of your compensator. I'll show you why here in a few. If you don't do that, you're going to have a bunch of issues. And then what I like to do is I like to thread it all the way on until it stops. All right, it stops. Obviously, we're nowhere near fitting the barrel hood into the slide, about 3/8 of an inch off. So you're just going to keep backing it off and trying again. That was kind of a lucky test, but some people maybe one off, and you'll see how close that is to locking in. Obviously, that's not going to work, so you just back it off again. And you want to be able to wiggle the comp. You can hold it up to the light, take a look between the fins and the slide and make sure there's some room. The big thing is at least having a piece of paper's worth of clearance between the slide. Most people have paper, they could test fit this. If you don't have any paper, you can just eyeball it and make sure that obviously nothing is hitting the slide. The compensator, if it hits the slide, you're going to do damage to the compensator or the slide itself. This is pretty much perfect. If you wanted to back it off another turn, you can. It's actually, the Loctite's already setting up, getting kind of hard. But you can see there's a little bit of a gap there on the bottom and on the top. So this will work just fine. You won't have any issues with this, but we can get a little tighter. So I'll go back to this location. And now we're going to start putting Loctite on the set screws. Just threading them into the slide, or excuse me, threading them into the compensator. I'm not going to go all the way. I'm just going to go until it hits and back it off a revolution. That way I can freely move the compensator. Again, pretty generous with the Loctite. You can clean your gun without removing the compensator, so there's no reason to not generously put this Loctite on here. You shouldn't be pulling it off unless you're putting a can on this setup. Compensators are semi-permanent things. Just makes it a lot easier for reliability. You're not going to have your comp wanting to loosen up on you. If you don't put enough Loctite, that may be the case. All right, so what I do now is I throw in the guide rod, and that's just going to keep everything nice and centered up and tight. I don't have to worry about the barrel coming out of the slide. I'll go ahead and clean up this Loctite on here just so it's not getting everywhere. And then what I like to do is I like to pinch the bottom right here. You can see this profile matches the geometry of the slide. So I'll just pinch there and I'll tighten it down with the long side of the Allen key. Not torque on it, just get it snug. Or I'll run my hands along here, make sure it's perfectly aligned, and then I'll look down the slide and make sure that the compensator doesn't appear to be off. Everything looks good. So we can go ahead and take the short end of the Allen key and tighten this up. Just keep going back and forth. You don't want to crank one side and then go to the other side and crank it. Just bounce back and forth, tightening it little by little. You can use a torque wrench here. You can get up to 14 to 16 inch pounds. You don't really want to go much tighter than that. These are very little set screws. Okay. And that's it. Throw it back on the gun. You're gonna wanna do this a couple times and make sure that you're not seeing signs of wear from the fins on the slide. This was a prototype gun, so you might see some aluminum residue from when we used to do testing on this, but I will assure you, the compensator is not hitting the slide. Again, you can look and make sure nothing is shifted between the slide and compensator. You're gonna want a gap there. And this thing is done. So we're gonna go over some of the common questions we get all the time in email. First things first is gap. What gap should be between the slide and the compensator? Well, if you've gotten this far, you already know there has to be enough gap that the fins are not hitting the slide, and at least the thickness of a piece of paper between them two. That should be more than enough clearance so that nothing interferes, nothing hits. The big thing you wanna look for is not threading the compensator on too far so that the hood of the barrel will not go up into the slide. If you wanted to start out and work your way in, you can also do that. You guys will notice I worked my way in and out. To me, that's just a little bit faster. I can find the rotation easier, but honestly, only thing that matters is that there's enough gap that nothing hits. Another question we get are what slides are compatible with the HCDG compensator? Any of the slides that have the extreme carry cut from PSA will work just fine. There's a lot of options that PSA has out there. Just make sure that it says this is an extreme carry cut. And all that is the angles on the front of the slide are the exact same, and they will match the angles on the compensator. So we offer a couple different colors for the HCDG. Common question we get is how close does it match PSA's colors? We have our Cerakoter using the exact same Cerakote that PSA does, but it's kind of like paint. If you spray it a little light or a little heavy, it's gonna have a little different hue to it. So there's a little bit of deviation, but we are spraying the same colors as PSA, so it should be really close. Why won't my compensator thread on all the way? Well, there's a couple reasons for this. The biggest thing is you do not have your set screws removed. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but this is the first thing we like to test. And really what it comes down to is when you thread your compensator on, pretend this is the set screw, it is hitting the edge of the barrel and won't let it go back any further. If you have something impeding the linear movement, it's not gonna go back. So that's why the second or third step in the instructions is remove the set screws entirely. It's not gonna stop it from going on all the way. Another thing is there could be some tolerance issues with the Dagger barrels. We found that they could be a little bit on the tight side and actually won't go into our go gauge that we have at the shop. If that is the case, reach out to us. We'll see if we can diagnose it over email. Worst case, you reach out to PSA and you get a new barrel. Will the HCDG fit other frames? Potentially. This is a Gen 3 system, so as long as it is a Gen 3 frame, let's say a Polymer 80 frame, it should work just fine. If you guys are watching this and you really like this build, we actually did a full video on it. If you guys want to check that out, it's over here. If you guys like this video, we'd appreciate a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.